Geopolitics can create so much of risk and uncertainty in the world today. Good afternoon, Professor Watawala and my dear colleagues, dear panel members, and those who have joined this webinar via Zoom. My topic is on agility and risk management in economic uncertainty, global and local perspectives on impacting Sri Lanka. So the structure for the presentation today is I will give a very brief introduction about geopolitics, that is the hot topic in the world today, in the contemporary world, and the extent of geopolitics and the impact of geopolitics on Sri Lanka, and then how can we navigate geopolitics, and then finally agility and risk mitigation under economic uncertainty. So these are the areas that I'm going to cover in this brief presentation. My dear friends, especially the picture that I'm showing now was appeared in Harvard Business Review on geopolitics. And you can see the world on the edge due to geopolitics. So much of risk is involved with the happenings across the world due to geopolitics. So that's why I specially selected this picture for you all to get an idea about geopolitics. Risk and economic uncertainty happen due to two dimensions, basically. One is due to geopolitics, and other one is due to the absence of proper policies and poor planning within a nation. Absence of proper policies and poor planning within a nation. When I was reading for my first master's at PIM long ago, I was taught that failing to plan is planning to fail. So planning is so important, my dear friends. So when there's no planning, along with geopolitics, you can imagine the level of uncertainty in the world, in the country. So just to give a very brief introduction about historical view of geopolitics. Geopolitics is not a new topic, my dear friends. It has been happening for the last so many, not centuries, but probably for millennia. Even 5,000 years before Christ, BC, we were having many geopolitical issues. Roman Empire and various other things. I have just quoted 3 examples for you to get an idea. This is before Christ, my dear friends, about 5,000 years ago. In 3200 BC, Sumerian city in Iraq made Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt and made by the city of Kish through invasion, right? That's roughly about 5,225 years ago. Then in 2181 BC, all Egypt collapsed due to another attack. And then in 5 AD, Anno Domini, that is just after 5 years of Jesus Christ's birth, Romans conquered most of the Middle East. So you can see how geopolitics has been happening across the world for many years, many years. Then coming back to geopolitics, this picture shows the rest, the meaning of geopolitics. It's, that encapsulates many areas, many arenas. Business and trade, when you say trade, it's especially the international trade. Cultural clashes, you can see what's happening in England. Diplomacy, commercial diplomacy, military diplomacy, foreign diplomacy, and many types of diplomacies. Then technology related, you can see how countries try to gather data, grab data, and destroy through cyber attacks and various things. Immigration issues, you can see the way West is tightening screws for migration. International laws are being violated, human rights, all these things are coming under geopolitics. Having said that, you can see there are many definitions, my dear friends. One is that global politics involves thinking and acting geographically. Another definition for geopolitics is much bigger. It says that Geopolitics explains how countries, businesses, terrorist groups, as an example, if you really analyze the definitions of Anti-Money Laundering Act, it goes as anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. So terrorism financing has also become a major problem within geopolitics. Terrorist groups, etc., attempt to reach their political goals by controlling geographic features of the world, geographic entities. So there are many definitions for this. So geopolitics focuses on political power linked to geographic space, particularly related to territorial waters, land territory, foreign relations, and foreign policy in correlation with diplomatic history. So you can see the areas that are involved in geopolitics. And in the contemporary world, geopolitics affect every country, whether the country is a small nation or a developed nation or a developing nation or a newly industrialized country, whatever, irrespective of the size or the status, geopolitics affects that country. So the father of geopolitics is known as the Sir Harold John Mackinder, who lived between 1861 to 1947, and he's the one who came up with the heartland theory. So he is known as the father of geopolitics. So my dear friends, geopolitics can occur due to many reasons. Now you can see the activities or the areas of these, how they create an impact over a particular nation, as well as the amount of risk that it creates due to these aspects. Expand political dominance, maintain global superiority. You can see the way Russia is trying to maintain their dominance. Other emerging superpowers like China, Saudi are trying to gain dominance. All these. Expand military dominance. Today, the most traded item in the world is not drugs, not oil, but arms, weapons, and ammunitions. So if you really see, my dear friends, even taking Porter's diamond model, demand creation is one of the key factors. Demand. So they create demand for weapons by having wars or whatever, putting countries against each other. To acquire resources, to expand international trade, because international trade is so important. Export proceeds are so vital for foreign exchange reserves to develop, to get more arms and all that, to gain distinctive competencies in so many areas, and for economic purposes, especially through sanctions. Sometimes they impose sanctions for various purposes. Maritime transportation, you can see how China is trying to create problems in the southern China Sea, blocking certain things, and last week they prohibited German ships crossing the southern sea. I don't know now what will happen, because Germany is the third biggest exporter in the world, and then spread terrorism, arms, ammunition and weapons, and money laundering. So geopolitics can occur due to various reasons. Also, now we'll move to the impact. Having given that introduction about geopolitics, definitions, how it happens, why it happens, and so on, now we will see the impact of geopolitics over Sri Lanka. Now these areas, my dear friends, directly create so much of a risk and uncertainty over Sri Lanka. I must tell you, direct impact over risk and uncertainty, economic uncertainty, and so many other uncertainties, including political uncertainties, debt restructuring in Sri Lanka. And you can see how creditors or how nations are pulling in opposite directions due to various reasons. I'll give you a very good point for you to ponder. China has given loans for 60 odd countries across the world. And now we are in the process of debt restructuring, which includes some of our loans, as per my knowledge, would be written off. So as a result, if it comes through, definitely a part of Chinese loans would also be written off. And then there's a possibility that they might take that as the benchmark for restructured loans given for other 60 odd countries, thus writing off many billions of dollars given by China. So this is how it works within geopolitics, and this is normally known as wheels within wheels. So that's why some countries are pulling in other direction and few other countries are pulling in one direction. So lots of wheels can be seen within wheels. Human rights accusations. Now West has been doing this for Sri Lanka, but now you can see in the West, in England, how some of these things are being violated. Then international trade, because no country can survive without international trade. We need imports, we need exports. You know what happened to Pinochet way back in 1967 or 69 in Chile. When he got the power by way of a coup, he said Chile is a rich country, I don't want imports and exports. And you know how he ended. So international trade is so vital for geopolitics. And this is one area where China is focusing on to strengthen their foreign exchange reserves as well as their dominance. And different standards, they use different yardsticks. Example, when IMF considered $3.3 billion, there were so many strings attached to it. But they considered a package of $115 billion to Ukraine without no conditions. So lots of issues can be seen, and this is all due to geopolitics. And also the key aspect is impact on Sri Lanka is the strategic location of Sri Lanka. This is very, very vital. That's why so much of pressure is being made on Sri Lanka because of the location. All superpowers are eyeing at Sri Lanka. And economic sanctions. You can see economic sanctions over China. Now I'll tell you, my dear friends, something for you to ponder again. Any country, because I lecture I lecture international trade and I'm a strategist. Any country can be destroyed if we impose economic sanctions, if we destroy the economic nerve centers of a nation. That's why long ago, when we were having the civil war, terrorist group was trying to destroy our economic nerve centers. Sapugaskanda oil refinery, Colombo port, Colombo airport, central bank and all that. That's why today America has imposed enormous amount of economic sanctions over Iran. That's why we were so scared during the UNHRC sessions whether they will impose economic sanctions on Sri Lanka a few years ago. So these are happening due to geopolitics as well. Some part is connected to geopolitics. Then political leaders have acted with prudence, allowing. So you have to be very tactful in handling geopolitics today. Otherwise the risk will go up, uncertainty would be enormous and so on. And also majority of the international help given to Sri Lanka attached with strings. Whenever China gives something, they will, attach that to a particular asset in Sri Lanka. Whenever India helps Sri Lanka, they will also say, okay, we would like to get this, or would you like to implement this, and so on. Right? Also, there are certain biased or baseless accusations. Whenever a Western country is going for elections, they come up with various accusations. They renew the accusations because to get the vote base or the votes in that country. So lots of things are happening. And also, when we are on a weak wicket, and the wicket is weak, bowlers can, get so many wickets. So we should not provide that bad wicket for the superpowers to bat well or bowl well. Weak politics, in Sri Lanka, and needless to mention, greed for power. I read an article recently where one of the superpowers was telling the president of that country's dream is to be the chairman for the world. Chairman for the world. So you can imagine the amount of pressure or the strategies that they have implemented to achieve that position. So these are some of the examples for impact on impact of geopolitics over Sri Lanka. When uncertainty, main causes for economic uncertainty are when uncertainty escalates, risk also increases in many dimensions and many facets. And these two have a correlation. Risk and uncertainty are correlated. So we have to mitigate the risk and to have proper policies to avoid economic uncertainty. I'll take you through in this section now. Because lack of policies, as a nation, we need policies. We need policies because policies provide the direction for a country. I'll give you a simple example for you to understand this, my dear friends. When you visit the zoological gardens in Dehiwala, when you buy the ticket, you enter, and the very first thing what you see is the arrow, because arrow provides the direction. If you follow those arrows, you can see all the animals and you can easily come to the exit after enjoying everything properly. But if you don't follow the arrows, you might get lost or you might miss few animals. Arrow provides the direction. So policies provide the direction for a country, long-term policies. And based on those long-term policies, 10, 15 years only, based on them only, corporate sector would formulate their strategies for the next 3 to 5 years. So when the policies are set, only corporate sector would become stable and progressive. When policies are not there, you are in a dilemma, and we are into a real VUCA world. And also poor leadership. Leaders can make or break a family. Leaders can make or break an organization. Leaders can make or break a country. And when these things are there, economic uncertainty, risk, geopolitics will obviously get into that country or vice versa and would worsen the situation. So how to overcome? Enhance domestic revenue. Now, Sri Lanka has basically, my dear friends, two major problems. Forget about the corruption, forget about the law and order. Those are issues, yes, I agree. But two major problems. We have to increase our domestic revenue generation. We have been having a budget deficit for the last so many decades, but we haven't taken action to solve that problem. It's one of the key issues. Right, from another dimension, our population is 22 million, but we have only about 2.9 million tax files, just about 13%, which is grossly inadequate. Then the second one is foreign exchange reserves. Personally, I feel as a strategist and you an external consultant that prime objective of any government should be to enhance the foreign exchange reserves. But this has not happened in Sri Lanka, sorry to say, my dear friends, for the last so many decades. That's why we are having two major issues. These two issues have to be solved. Otherwise, my envisaged position is that we'll have to go to IMF again by 2026, where the conditions would be very tough, very tough. We have to have policies. And also we have to be agile, congruence with the evolving world. We are into drone era. Are we using our IT resources? Most of the students in rural areas do not have, internet facilities, weak signals. These are like real examples of poor agility as a nation. Right, introduce professionals for decision making without political interference. India was in dire straits in late 90s. Then Narasimha Rao, as the Prime Minister, appointed a 3-member professional committee to take India to greater heights. Dr. Abdul Kalam, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and Narayan Murthy. These three only brought India to the present level and the new millennium. So professionals' decision making is so vital. And also enforce punishment. Professor Sigmund Freud said that human behavior is primarily controlled by its consequences. And then ability to inculcate intuition, ability to read the future is so vital to avoid uncertainty, economic uncertainty and risk mitigation. And proactiveness. Agility is actually a little bit of reactive, but if you can think something and do before it happens, it is so important. So these are some of the measures that I suggest to overcome economic uncertainty and mitigate risks. Then how to navigate geopolitics? I'll give you 4 dimensions. Follow the non-aligned concept, which is really good for Sri Lanka, taking our location, strategic location and so on. Neither there nor here, right is right, wrong is right, wrong is wrong. Formulation of meticulously planned policies. I'll give you the names of the policies in a while. And implementation of them. Now, when I checked some time back, about 2 months back for some other matter, we have certain policies that are obviously outdated, but not being implemented. Implementation is also important. Then strengthen foreign diplomacy. This is very, very important, especially in the contemporary world. Our diplomacy, foreign diplomacy is very, very weak and at a very low ebb. And then strong visionary leadership with logos, ethos and pathos. Aristotle said that if you want to be a leader, way back in 381 BC, you have to have logos, ethos and pathos. You have to be logical, you have to be ethical, and you should understand the pulse of the people. So non-aligned concept, as I said, to become a country that is not formally aligned with or against any major superpower bloc or superpower. And then I suggest at least of 8 policies for Sri Lanka for the next 10 to 15 years. Economic policy is a must, and we have to include everything. I'll give you a very good shining example. Way back in 84, when Lee Kuan Yew designed the economic policy for Singapore, in 84, my dear friends, about 40 years ago, he included non-economic aspects also into their economic policy with the finance minister. One was that to make Singapore the 3rd least corrupt country in the world and to have a very strong regulatory framework. That's how Singapore was developed. So you have to think out of the box with not only fiscal policy and the monetary policy. No, it goes beyond, well beyond those things today. And then agriculture policy, education policy. You know, CPM, you all know very well the standard of education today in Sri Lanka. Foreign policy, trade policy, energy policy. We are suffering we have one of the highest electricity unit costs in Asia. So do you think that we will attract FDIs? Transport policy, can you drive peacefully today? No, right? But you don't see these things in other countries. I'm addressing you from New Zealand all the way. But here the transport policy is solid, excellent. No left side overtaking, nothing. They obey color lights to the core. Then the health policy, you know what's happening in the health sector. So these are the suggested, at least the minimum 8 set of policies that country needs at the moment to mitigate the risk, to overcome geopolitics as well as to overcome economic uncertainty. Then strengthen the foreign relations. High commissioners, ambassadors with knowledge on political diplomacy, commercial diplomacy, military diplomacy, market intelligence, and sound communication skills. Educate them with gathering market intelligence. As an example, if there's a sudden demand in the West for X product, they should be immediately, informed. They should immediately inform the trade ministry about the demand and then make arrangements to improve our exports, as an example. Then also assigning KPIs for exports, inward remittances, tourism, and FDIs. They should be assessed on because world is moving towards performance-oriented culture. Even we have KPIs. I have been working with KPIs since 1992. So even for high commissioners, ambassadors, they should have KPIs. And visionary political leadership with logos, ethos and pathos. Majority view doesn't matter. In leadership, majority view doesn't matter. I'll take 30 seconds to explain a very good example. When Lee Kuan Yew selected the present Changi airport location in Singapore, it's a huge land, but he utilized that only 40% for Terminal 1 initially. And he kept the balance 60% for about 18 years. But all were up in arms, criticizing Lee Kuan Yew, just like the Asian politics. If you can't utilize this land, give it to us, we will do. You go home. But he said, no, I have a vision for Singapore. And then when Singapore Airlines was competing with Qantas, Emirates, Qatar, British Airways, he utilized that 60% and put up, constructed Terminal 1, 2 and 3, all three. Because as a leader, visionary leader, he knew that one day if he wants to expand the airport in Singapore, he can't find another property elsewhere in tiny Singapore. See, his long-term thinking, visionary thinking is this, my dear friends. So majority, entire country was on one side, but he was right. And then envisage, you have to analyze the scenarios and take action. Envisage scenarios in planning to overcome economic uncertainties. And also, I don't know whether most of them even heard about this. As a nation, we have to conduct a heat map analysis for risks at national level, and take action accordingly. Thank you so much.